It's it's 5 and has 3 lands. It's pretty hard to do better than that. Typically, when you get to a 5-card hand, if you see 3 or more lands, it's almost always a keep as long as the hands are even remotely reasonable, which here they are. He's going to scry to the bottom with Temple.
It's just a tough hand, you know? That's all. I think a 4-card hand is not going to beat any sort of real hand from Danny, so he kind of has to keep this, but...
Yeah, I mean, usually when you look at 4-card hands, things like 4 lands are a pretty strong keep.
Yeah.
Jim's hand's not that far off it. Turn 2 Seeker of the way from Jim Davis. He does have a play here. Question is, will it survive on Jessup's side? He's going to go ahead and he's going to let it stick around, so Jim's Valor stance is not invalidated. Jim draws a Mantis Rider, but as you mentioned, no blue just yet.
Yeah, he picked up a Battlefield Forge to go along with his planes and Temple of Triumph and other planes in hand, but can't deploy the Mantis Rider.
Well, he's going to see just how much damage he can get off this Seeker of the way before he draws blue. It will swing in to start. Danny's going to go to 18. Jim plays a 3rd land and passes the turn. Danny not even bothering to use a Hero's Downfall on this Seeker.
Yep. He would have done it on the main phase of his 3rd turn, I think, to play around something like Valorous Stance, and I think he's just seeing no reason to pull the trigger on. Yeah.
This is a 2-2 for 2. Danny can take many hits off this. And Jim for the draw hits Goblin Rabblemaster. That's not bad here. Hits a 4th land.
As far as 5-card hands go, you know, Jim is missing blue mana, but this is not shabby. I would be surprised if he was able to win this game, but he's at least going to be able to play a little bit.
So here comes Seeker of the way. 2 more damage in. Jane Jessup's more than happy to take it. He's down to 16. And Jim, he knows how good that Rabblemaster is. He's going to have to protect it. He doesn't want to play it till it can have a Valor stance behind it. He'll pass the turn. Danny will just play a land and pass back. See Danny 2 dig through times. Garruk, Hero's Downfall. And in a lot of ways, this is a hand, I think, that with a 7-card hand, Jim would have had a great shot at beating. Danny does not have much action. He has just 1 Rule Cell and Hero's Downfall, and since then he's just drawn more lands and more dig through times. He could have been aggroed out.
No, I agree. And Jim with an interesting draw this turn of Outpost Siege. I still think he just wants to hold up Valorous Stance. Just keep chipping away here and be able to play this Valorous Stance for profit, like if Danny pulls the trigger on Hero's Downfall.
Yeah. So now the Seeker does swing in. Now Danny goes for Hero's Downfall. If you're Jim, how much do you suspect a Disdainful Stroke? Danny hasn't downfalled this any of the previous turns, but now that he's on 5 mana, he does. It is suspicious.
Yeah, it's on his radar, but I think that Jim is going to not go through too many hoops to play around things because he's on 5 cards and doesn't have a lot of option to do so.
Sure. Jim with his first choice here. He can Valor Stance or he can go for an Outpost Siege post-combat. We'll see the route he takes. But Downfall being pointed at Seeker of the way. Does Jim want to do anything about it? The nightmare would be if he lets this die and goes for Outpost Siege and gets it Disdainful Stroked, the board looks pretty bad for Jim.
Yep.
And he may just not be able to risk that happening.
The flip side is this might be his best spot to cash in Valorous Stance for profit.
Yeah, and the Seeker will valorously stand against Hero's Downfall, pumps up to a 3-3. And it'll connect and put Jessup down to 13, Jim up to 23. Rest Jim's hand, not very castable at the moment. He has actually, he may just do more damage. He's in a Lightning Strike upstairs. So before Jim goes down to 13, Danny goes to 13 rather. He'll cash that in, and now Danny will be at 9.
Lightning Strike's not doing much else, and there's no guarantee that the Seeker connects one more time. So if you want to get the extra point, that's your turn to do it.
Yeah, 9. Danny's got to start to be a little concerned. Draws another land. That's Temple of Malady. And he'll pass. Danny actually does not have any plays here. He has 2 digs, a Garruk Apex Predator, and 2 more lands. I guess he can crack the fetch land and dig this turn. But that's about it. And Jim drawing Stoke the Flames here.
We got a game.
Yeah, we do.
We got a game.
And the question is Jim willing to completely throw caution to the wind into 6 open mana and just say, stoke your face, Swing Seeker? It is bold.
Yep. I mean, the more conservative line of play is just cast Outpost Siege.
He'll go with Goblin Rabblemaster, and Danny, no answer to that one either.
And I think part of the motivation to do this is Danny's draw so far has been awkward enough that the indication is that there's a very good chance his plan this turn is to dig, because he's going to play the 6th land. He has a Polluted Delta to sack. This allows him to Jim to play around something like Disdainful Stroke by not committing the Outpost Siege.
Yeah, Danny goes to 6 on that attack. Now goes to 5, cracking a fetch land. He's going to dig on end step, but Jim's going to start smelling blood on this one.
This is the most punishing play that Jim can make, assuming that his goals are make sure it's as awkward as possible if Danny wants to play dig through time this turn, get the most damage in, while still playing around Disdainful Stroke. This is the best play that Jim has access to.
So here's the dig through time, and Danny's going to need quite a lot. I mean, the danger here, right, is that Jim has a 4-point burn spell and an Outpost Siege, and Outpost Siege is usually good for 1 damage if it resolves.
Yep.
Especially if you're willing to set it to dragons. See, on Danny's side, it is more lands, Disdainful Stroke, Hero's Downfall. He's got a lot of his choice of removal spells, but this is not an easy board to clean up, especially not when you're at 5 and your opponent has a 4-point burn. And yeah, he'll take the Downfall and the Disdainful Stroke.
He was really looking for Crux of Fate or something along those lines. If he taps out for Garrick, I believe he just dies on the way back.
I mean, Disdainful Stroke's a great pickup. That Stoke the Flames in Jim's hand needs to be, can't resolve. It needs to be countered. So now at least Danny has the counter spell for it.
The opportunity cost for Danny to leave up 2 mana this game is pretty high. Now, Satyr Wayfinder is a nice draw because he gets to go to land number 7. He still gets to hold up the Hero's Downfall and the Disdainful Stroke and get a blocker into play. So even though it's turn 7 or whatever it is, that's a nice draw.
Yeah, 6 lands in play. He has Satyr Wayfinder, Hero's Downfall, Disdainful Stroke. He could play all of them in 1 turn. Does have untapped land in hand of Llanowar Wastes, but he's at 5. Has to be concerned with how this game's turned out.
I mean, Jim still has cards in his hand. If he draws blue mana, Jim can just jam Manus Rider. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong here for Danny.
Here's Llanowar Wastes. Danny is going to go for the Apex Predator, and that's going to kill him, I believe. Apex Predator will deal, Danny will go up to 7. Jim has 3 damage on the board and 4 more in hand.
We got a game. Not only do we have a game, but
we have the end of a game.
Yet another win on a mulligan to 5 or less this weekend. We've seen plenty of it.
And there you go. Jim shows the Stoke the Flames, and what a steal on a mull to 5 on the draw. Jim Davis never finds a blue source and doesn't care. He takes game 1 off Jessup.
And, you know, Jessup decided to make his bet early on in the game with the Seeker the way. He could have just tapped it on his 3rd turn to remove it, and that Seeker ended up doing, I believe at final count, 10 points of damage.
Yeah, if you count that last turn, it's 10 points of damage from Seeker.
Which is, you know, half of his life total. That's a lot.
And, and there's a lot of ways where I think, even on that last turn, if Danny can play Wayfinder, downfall the Rabblemaster, and then hold up Disdainful Stroke, and I think he's got more game right there. He's not good, but he's not dead.
Yeah, I think he just sort of decided I'm going to try to stabilize this game as fast as possible. If Stoke's not in Jim's hand, I'm fine.
It's optimistic. I don't know. It feels very optimistic to me to think that Garrick play isn't going to kill you.
I agree. It is optimistic's the right word for it.
All right. Well, they're gonna go to sideboard here. We've talked about this one yesterday, but let's look at this one again. We go back over to Jessup's side. He does have cards like Courser of Krufix in the sideboard, and figure that's actually something pretty good against Jeskai aggro.
Yes, he's got a Pearl Lake Ancient, an Aether Spouts, a Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negates, 2 Farika's Cures, 2 Tassiker, the Golden Fang, a Kiora, and 2 copies of Drown Sorrow. I like the Drowns in this matchup. Jim's got a lot of small creatures. I think the Tassikers and the Courser of Krufixes are okay, but it's worth knowing that Jim has the option of sideboarding up to 4 copies of Valorous Stands, which really takes away some of the impact of those cards.
Now, card like also Farika's Cure, that's a pretty excellent card for this matchup.
Great removal spell, Jim. Again, a lot of 2 toughness creatures. He's an aggressive deck. He's trying to burn Danny out. Farika's Cure does a lot of good work.
All right, on Jim Davis's side, Disdainful Strokes are pretty excellent against a deck that's trying to resolve cards like Dig Through Time. You're going to see post-board, I imagine, Danny's strategy of kill spells and into Dig Through Time is going to be attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. The Treasure Cruise will be coming in here. The Valorous Stance, I think, will come in, though 4 might be a lot, but I think Jim will leave in some copies, especially with Tassiker and Courser Krufix being in Danny's sideboard. 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, excellent for this matchup. Obviously, Danny's got a lot of big stuff. The Ash Cloud Phoenix is very good here as well. I think there's arguments for Bramaz and Sarkhan as well. They're just powerful threat. Bramaz very good at fighting against the small removal spells in Danny's deck, things like Bioblade, things like Drown Sorrow. Not the most efficient threat, but at least something that allows him to play some of that asymmetrical warfare game we talked about in the first game. And Sarkhan's just kind of a big, powerful thing. So I think there's good options in Jim's sideboard. And more importantly, he's got a lot of bad cards to cut. The Wild Slashes and the Lightning Strikes do very little. So even some of these less efficient options, I think, are still upgrades over the small burn spells.
Yeah. We talked about the third quarter of events leading up to our invitationals this year, as invitational number 3 was in New Jersey. We're going to look at how the last one of the season, this is our season 4 schedule, leads up to the season-ending invitational in Seattle. So that's going to start in September, where we go back to having our Modern Opens. This is the 2-day Modern events in Cincinnati, and go to Worcester, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis.
After that, we head to Atlanta for a Standard Open Series. We go to St. Louis for Legacy. Modern in Dallas. We're back here for the third time this year, October 31st to November 1st. A Standard Open Series in Philadelphia after that. Once we're done with Philadelphia, we have a limited Grand Prix in Atlanta, November 13th through 15th. A Legacy Open Series in New Jersey. We return to Denver for the first time in several years, December 5th through 6th. This is a 4 Invitational in Seattle with a Standard Open Series and Standard and Modern as the invitational formats, 11th through 13th of December. And then, of course, at the end of the year, the Players' Championship in Roanoke, Virginia, December 19th and 20th.
And that is our schedule for all of 2015. Remember, we go back to that Players' Championship, which it looks like Jim Davis is going to be joining us.
Looking pretty good, particularly after stealing game 1 over there.
Yeah, Jim Davis certainly got a fire lit after last year's Players' Championship. He was one of the first 4 players to exit from the event, prepared for the event, and really, I think, felt like he wanted to improve on it this year and punching his ticket once again early in the year.
Yeah, it's a big priority. I know that Jim was disappointed with his performance at the Players' Championship. It's a tournament he was building towards the entire year, didn't have the run that he wanted there, and a big priority is to get back there and to do well. Step 1, obviously, is getting back there. And to that end, Jim has definitely committed himself to going to as many Opens and IQs as possible. Has had a very good run in Open Series, win his first earlier this year, and perhaps on the cusp of winning his second Open in Season 1. I mean, a lot of the work, 3/4 of those points are generated, at least time-wise, through 2014.
Jim did have a really strong end of the last season.
But he has not been resting on his laurels by any stretch. He has been going to a bunch of Opens, performing very well at them, and of course the IQ circuit in New York, a fixture in that scene as well.
And in a lot of ways, you see Danny Jessup doing the same thing. Remember, Danny, with his top 4 finish in the Seattle Invitational, was just 2 matches away from making it to the Players' Championship himself. He was the last at-large player not to make it into the Players' Championship.
Finals appearance. He lost to Dylan Donegan in the finals and beating Jim in the top 4. And I know that Danny was very disappointed with outcome 2. Barely missed the Players' Championship. Did not play his best match against Dylan Donegan in the finals as well. And, it's a priority for both of these players. They've committed themselves. It looks like for Jim, Season 1 is going to be where he gets that reward. And for Danny, setting the stage for Season 2, potentially being the point invitee there.
And I'm thinking, so with last game, Danny may have got a little bit of an expensive lesson there, at least in the matchup. And he may be quicker on the trigger with his kill spells going into game 2. Certainly when his opponent was low on resources, as he was last game, it seemed like a priority on Danny's high-end hand to make sure that his spells that he wanted to trade would trade. And it just didn't work out that way.
I think that from Danny's perspective, he was thinking, well, my opponent's on 5 cards. I can afford to take these hits. I only have this Hero's Downfall as protection. And if Jim has something like Goblin Rabble Master or Mantis Rider, it's really important for me to get
I don't want him to just have an uncontested Rabble Master. So maybe he can't, I suppose if he kills it right away, he does open the door to just getting Rabble Mastered out of the game.
It's one of those things where if you could see Jim's hand, he would have played way differently. I think Danny played the odds correctly, but Jim's hand was just very punishing. The Seeker was the only thing going on. He had the ability to protect it, and Danny ended up taking a lot of damage as a result.
Going on to game 2, Danny's going to be on the play again. I believe on a mulligan as well. Jim with a full grip.
So now we've seen Jim win on 5. Earlier in this tournament, Danny Jessup won on 4 cards.
I mean, it has been an ongoing theme of the tournament. Not only have we seen a lot of players mulligan to 5, but we've seen a lot of players win on mulligans to 5.
Yeah. It's been pretty interesting to see. I believe game 3 of the quarterfinals with JB Milo, he mulliganed to 5 in game 3.
JB Milo, when you look at that one, JB Milo very nearly won on a mulligan to 5 on the draw there.
Yeah. Which is a strange thing in the standard format because the games often feel like, well, it's just
mulligans decided.
Well, it's a lot of mid-range matchups. It's a lot of cards like Downfall and Obzon Charm where just count up the number of cards you've seen in the game it probably correlates pretty strong to winning. But in these matchups, at least, it's been about strategy and about the specific cards in the matchup and less about just the raw card count.
that was the second game Multi 5 we've seen Jim Davis win today on camera. He had one earlier, which was actually quite elementary. Mulligan to 5, had a turn 3 Rabblemaster, it didn't die, and 2 turns later the game was over.
Yep.
On the other side of the bracket, Michael Miller, our 1 seed, also playing Jeskai. He is up a game as well, so it may be a mirror match in the finals, but we will see both these Sultai players trying to fight back as both players trade tap lands here to start the game, and Danny Jessup has Satyr Wayfinder. And the Satyr, just really impressive in this deck.
Gerard Fabiano in the top 8 of Grand Prix Cleveland, while we are potentially looking at a Sultai control mirror match in the finals of the Dallas Open. Very, very good weekend for Gerard. Feels like we've been saying that a lot
Gerard in
lately.
the top 8 of a Grand Prix again?
Again.
He is on having an unreal year.
It's more than a year now.
It is. Seeker of the Way. That was 2014 when this started. Seeker of the Way is the play for Jim. Facing off against the Wayfinder. You see Courser of Krufix, that's out of the sideboard. It's in Danny's hand.
This was a card that I was skeptical of Danny bringing in just because of all the copies of Valorous Stance in Jim's sideboard. See how Danny wants to play this.
Yeah, a lot of options. Sultai Charm, Drown in Sorrow, available in Danny's hand. I think he just passes the turn. What I believe is he's holding up Sultai Charm in case of a Rabblemaster. Or maybe, and then he also does have the Drown in Sorrow to play later.
A lot of options here.
Yeah.
I don't think he just wants to have the Courser run into a Valorous Stance or a Stoke the Flames here, trying to get a little bit more out of it.
Wants to have a chance to flip a land off it.
Yeah, at least get one opportunity of a land drop off of it.
Certainly could use the extra card. He was on the mulligan. We go back over to Jim. Jim's hand not bad by any means on its own. You see Stoke the Flames, Mantis Rider, Valorous Stance, all available for Jim. And, well, it's hard to pass up a turn 3 Mantis Rider, so Jim won't do it. He'll play Mantis Rider, goes to 19, but puts Jessup to 17. And Matt talked about the asymmetrical warfare. Jim's deck's not great at playing it, but when it is good, it's good. So you see Mantis Rider here facing off against Drown in Sorrow and Sultai Charm.
Yeah, when it doesn't take that many hits from Mantis Rider for it to do its work. Even if Danny's able to untap and find an answer, it's a lot of damage. And this deck can really compound it with Stoke the Flames. And if Jim gets to untap, then Valorous Stance becomes online.
Yeah, Danny deciding if he wants to just, I think if he wants to just Sultai Charm or chump the Seeker. He'll chump Seeker with the Satyr Wayfinder. Go down to 17. Be a pass. Jessup. I think now he's debating if he wants to fire off Sultai Charm to draw 2.
Well, he's got a Crux of Fate in his hand, and I wonder if his plan is to try to get to turn 5, but that seems pretty ambitious to me.
Yeah, Farika's Cure is his draw for the turn. He'll go ahead and crack Polluted Delta. Looks like he wants to make his way toward Courser. And, man, he has removal, but it's just this Mantis Rider is a problem.
Well, I think that Danny may just go and Farika's Cure the Seeker of the Way this turn anyway and just give up on the Courser. I don't know. But once Jim untaps, he's got Disdainful Stroke and Valorous Stance in his hand. So this Mantis Rider is likely to stick around for a very long time. We're looking at just Bioblight as clean answers.
Yeah, I mean, it's liable to stick around for the whole game. Temple into play, so it's probably not going to be the Courser at this point.
Yeah, I think this is looking like Farika's Cure or just passing with the intent on using Crux of Fate the next turn.
Puts a lot of pressure on Crux of Fate, and like I said, I like what Jim has done here. A boatload of removal spells for Danny, but nothing he can really cast and do much with. He'll take the Farika's Cure play, though.
I thought there was actually a chance that turn that Danny would just go ahead and use Drown in Sorrow instead. It's more mana efficient this turn. He gets to scry, and it keeps an instant in his hand instead
I
of
actually
a
agree. Because also the Farika's Cure is much better at teaming up with other kill spells to kill Mantis Rider as well.
It's a better response to Goblin Rabblemaster. There's a lot of... Also, if Danny gets to the spot where he's holding up Disdainful Stroke, then Farika's Cure is much more potent to pair with Disdainful Stroke than Drown in Sorrow is. I don't know, especially once Danny scries to the bottom of the scry land, then I kind of want to scry again. I don't know.
Well, here comes Mantis Rider for 3 more. Danny down to 15. Look at Jim. He does not have any other plays, but he's just going to hold up. This is a protect the Mantis Rider strategy if you've ever seen one. Valorous Stance and Disdainful Stroke running defense for it.
Yeah, there's no rush.
And Danny with a decent plan against it. If you can't kill it, maybe you can just create some value and life gain through it. He'll play Courser of Krufix for the turn. And I do like how this lines up.
Yep. Although this is a good opportunity for Jim to say, stoke the Corsair Crewfix and then still untapping it to leave up Disdainful Stroke and Valorous Stance. That's asking a lot of Danny to get through.
Danny with a tap land here. It's going to be Temple. Temple of Deceit. Danny gains life up to 16. Now we will, looks like he's going to keep the dig through time on top. Stocked Graveyard, pretty hard to say no.
Yep.
And Jim's going to stoke at the Corsair. Can't go upstairs yet. The Corsair would probably just gain the 4 life back. And Jim has a draw. He does hit a land for the turn. It's a Temple. And Jim is protecting the Mantis Rider well, but there's some danger. He knows Danny's about to draw the dig through time. And if it finds a Bile-Blight, then Jim can't really protect from that one.
I imagine that Jim's going to be using Disdainful Stroke on the dig.
Yeah.
Even if he gets hit with Crux of Fate, he has so many resources in his hand. He's got a Rabble Master to follow up with. I don't think he really cares that much about just getting hit with, you know, a 1-for-1 removal spell on the Mantis Rider. If this thing goes all the way, great. But I think Jim's got enough tools to work with where he doesn't have to bank on that.
Yeah. Because his land comes into play tapped, it means that Disdainful Stroke will leave him vulnerable to Hero's Downfall, but you know, that's not the 3-mana kill spell Danny has. He has the Sultai Charm instead. So a scry from Jim, and just a pass again. 3 more damage, Jessup down to 13. And Danny trying to find a way to get past Mantis Rider. He's just going to pass the turn. This does overload Jim's mana again on the Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, this probably opens up a path for Crux of Fate if Jim does not have 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke. Because I suspect Jim is going to fight over this one.
So yeah, he's waiting to do this fight on Jim's upkeep, it looks like. So 2 mana, that's going to be for dig through time. And we'll see if it resolves. It would be hard for Jim to let it resolve, and he will not. Disdainful Stroke will take care of it. Jim will get to play a turn. The only card that Danny can play right now is the Sultai Charm in his hand. Takes 3 off Mantis Rider. Jessup is down to 10. And just another pass by Jim, not letting down Valorous Stance.
Yep. I like this Sultai Charm here from Danny. He needs to find help, and the Drown Sorrow in his hand is not worth very much, so he has an easy discard.
Yeah, this feels a lot like drawing 2 cards. He did. They were 2 lands, though. He also has an easy discard in Basic Island. And draws Satyr Wayfinder for the turn. So Wayfind, he'll start with Crux of Fate. Hopes this one works, but it will not. The Mantis Rider will could valorously stand against Crux of Fate as well.
Yeah, Jim with a couple of different ways again to blunt the impact of this card.
Oh, he has a second Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah.
He'll go with Valorous Stance. Another Temple from Jessup. Scries to the bottom, and this one Mantis Rider just doing so much work. Draw was another Mantis Rider for Jim. Probably won't see him deploy that one, though. Swing for Mantis Rider puts Danny down to 6, and Jim passes.
No rush. No reason to tap out for anything and allow something like Garrick to get into play.
Yeah, he did have that good point there. Yeah, he could have even gone for Outpost Siege, but yeah, as long as he... Why change from a winning line if it's not working?
Yeah, there's 2 options right now. Because you can imagine that Danny's hands doesn't have something like Downfall. You would have seen it by now. Danny's hand's good or Danny's hand's bad. If Danny's hand's bad, then it doesn't matter. And if his hand's good, you're much better with the Disdainful Stroke available than another Mantis Rider in play.
And Temple of Malady taken by Jessup. Temple played there, keeping a card on top. So at least something he sees that he likes. We're going to go back over to Jim. And he may end step something now, just drawing, just not even casting the spells. See, he has Jessup down to 6. Discipline on Jim's side could try to lethal with second Mantis Rider, but it opens him up to Bile-Blight.
Although I just don't. Danny
doesn't have Bile-Blight.
You would have seen him by now.
He has to decide, is there anything else he opens himself up to if he does that?
Yeah, this is the safer route. I think Jim, if you asked him, is Mantis Rider good here, he would say almost certainly. But with Disdainful Stroke in hand and Danny having scry to the top, it's... All right, Bile-Blight's a really nice pickup.
Yeah, I mean, he scried to the top, so you have to be concerned.
Well,
Perhaps it was Bile-Blight.
I think that Jim can tell himself a story where it's just something big. You know, it's one of the 7 or 8 drops, and then you can go ahead and...
And Danny, this may seal, he's going to go ahead and Bile-Blight the Mantis Rider. This is on Jim's upkeep. Had he done it in combat, then Jim would not be able to play second Mantis Rider. But he did not. Jim plays second Mantis Rider and a 2-0 victory. Number 1 seed Jim Davis, he is headed on to the finals.
And you can see the value of the counterspells post-forward as he just played a super efficient game there. Was able to get a threat into play. Danny was winning one of those rare situations that he didn't have a removal spell at the ready for the Mantis Rider. Dealt a bunch of points of damage, and once Jim got to untap with Valorous Stance and Disdainful Stroke, just played a much more efficient game than Danny could.
Yeah, and you've seen it right now. I think Jim Davis's experience has just carried him through the top 8. Had a very close game against JB Milo. Both players playing very technically sound. It gets to the end of the match where I think they had to wait till one player to miss something. Eventually, JB does it. Jim takes the game in 3. And I just think this game, especially when you look at that mull to 5 and that second game that happened, the patience and experience on Jim Davis's side really paid off that game, and I think it showed some mastery with his deck.
Yeah, no, that was not an easy match to win by any stretch of the imagination, and there's a lot of players there, I think, at the end of that game that would have gotten impatient with the card in hand and just said, I'm going to play an Outpost Siege here because it's powerful, it stays in play, or I'm going to play a Rabble Master because I'm already insulated against Drown in Sorrow, so whatever. And Jim realized that the biggest thing he has to protect himself from is Danny getting an opening to resolve something like